Hello, I'm here again with another chat video, and the last one of these that I did I called Tea Time Thoughts, and I had a cup of tea. But I'm filming this in the middle of the day, and if I have more than one cup of tea a day, I don't sleep. So this time I have squash, which I realise is cheating, but I'm still going to call this Tea Time Thoughts because it's my channel and I want to. So, there are a few things that I wanted to discuss in this video that aren't necessarily things that belong in videos about each particular topic, but are things that I wanted to have a chat to you all about. And they're more booktube related than book related, but oh well. So firstly, my lovely friend Nisha from the channel On the Margins Of recently mentioned me in a love letters video, which was a video where she wrote lovely letters to various booktubers that she's friends with, thanking them and shouting them out, and honestly that video nearly brought me to tears, and I would love to say that I'm not an emotional person, but I am. But I was in public at the time that I watched the video, so I couldn't like cry in public. Well, I could, but I didn't want to, so I held it back. But honestly, I just really wanted to publicly say thank you so much to Nisha. I feel so blessed to be able to call you a friend. You're my first friend here on BookTube, and it means so much to me that I'm able to talk to you, and we talk all the time now, like every single day, and it's so nice to have found a true friend on this platform, because after all, that is the main reason that I started this channel. So I feel so lucky to have made a friend, and especially one as lovely and kind as Nisha. So thank you, Nisha. I really appreciate it. And for anyone else that's watching, please do go and check out her channel. I will link all of her details everywhere, including her Twitter. She really is just a wonderful person that you should absolutely spend your time to go and watch her videos, because they're fantastic and she's fantastic. So, gush aside, I want to talk about Twitter more generally. I have never had Twitter before, and I think I set up my Twitter a couple of weeks ago now, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, to go along with this BookTube channel, because I had heard that having Twitter, book Twitter, would be a really good way to keep in touch with the community and to make friends, and I definitely think that that is the case. But I do find it a little bit overwhelming. Having never had Twitter before, I didn't really know what to expect, and it moves so fast. Like, I'm based in the UK, so a lot of the people that I follow and a lot of the people that are posting on Twitter are based in the US, and I'll wake up in the morning and there'll be so much activity that I've missed out on over on book Twitter, that it can be a little bit overwhelming to catch up. So I'm still kind of finding my stride with that. Really, the reason I bring it up is because if there's anybody watching that feels like they want to join the community but they don't really know how, I would recommend getting over onto Twitter and just ease yourself into it. That's what I'm doing. I'm not very active on Twitter just yet, but I do respond to people. I don't really get the whole making posts thing. I don't really know what to say, but I am trying to engage with the community there by speaking to people. And if you're over on Twitter, say hello to me. I'd love to hear from you. So that's Twitter, and the next thing that I wanted to discuss kind of comes out of that, because a couple of weeks ago, Jessie from Bowties and Books posted a request for recommendations for a friend of theirs who wanted to read fantasy books, big fantasy books, but that don't have any reference at all to any kind of sexual violence or sexual abuse or anything like that. And I read an awful lot of fantasy, and fantasy is really my bag, like especially big fantasy books. It's basically all I read, which you'll probably all have noticed. And I had a really, really hard time thinking of books to recommend that had zero reference to any kind of sexual violence or abuse, like any reference at all. Because while a lot of the fantasy books that I read don't have it as a main theme, when I was thinking through the list of books that especially the books I've read recently, I only came up with a very, very small list of books that didn't actually have any sexual violence or assault in them at all, not even references to past abuse having occurred. And that was a little bit scary actually, because I realised that, that means that there are so many people who want to read fantasy and can't because they're potentially going to be triggered by some of the themes that seem to come up time and time again in these fantasy books. And I'm lucky in that it's not an issue for me. I can read those scenes, and of course they're horrible, and of course they are emotional, but they don't trigger me. I'm in that privileged position where I haven't had to experience anything like that myself, and I don't know anybody who has, or not anybody that's told me that they have. So I'm privileged in that way, but then it did make me think. Like I said, I really couldn't think of that many books where that wasn't at least mentioned at some point. And I don't know, that just kind of worried me a little bit, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because it shouldn't, I don't want to say that it's used as a plot device, because in the majority of cases it isn't moving the plot forwards at all, but in a lot of cases it is part of the reason why the characters are the way they are. Like for an example, I will talk about the Study series by Maria V. Schneider. Now, one of the characters in that series of books goes through something, and I'm going to be very vague because spoilers in case anybody does want to read these books, but somebody goes through something along those lines and it makes them a stronger person. Now, that is, of course, one of the possible outcomes of going through something like that, but it's not the only one. I imagine that there are hundreds of ways that a person could emotionally respond to going through something as horrific as sexual violence or abuse, or any kind of violence or abuse really. And in that particular example, it partially shapes who she is, and I'm sure that it would partially shape, or shape to a huge degree, how anyone would be as a person after going through something like that. But that made me sort of question, why is it that that is used so often in books as a way of defining a person? I hope this isn't coming across the wrong way. Like, I don't have any specific problem myself with any of these books, but it did just kind of occur to me when I was trying to respond to that tweet that I was really struggling to think of fantasy books where that wasn't used, at least as a reference, even if it didn't explicitly happen in the story. There were a lot of books where there was reference to it either having happened during the story, which I don't read a lot of, because I do find it difficult, but also books where that is part of a character's past and it at least partially defines why they are the way they are, however that might be. And I don't know, it kind of bothered me a little bit that was such a prevalent theme in these kinds of books. And yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts about this subject, because it wasn't something that had ever really occurred to me before I was responding to that tweet, because I listed off a huge list of books and then I went, oh, actually, this book makes a slight reference to it having happened in the past, and in this book it actually explicitly happens, or there's explicit reference to it having happened in the past. And actually I found it really difficult to make recommendations that didn't include that kind of content. So yeah, it was just something that I wanted to address as something that I found a little bit of a shame, really. What else? I recently did an announcement video, as did my friend Nisha, for our readathon, our Schwabathon, so I'll link that somewhere. Please do come and join in with that. We are really excited to engage with all of you guys, talking about all of Victoria Schwab's books, any that you are reading, plan to read, have already read. I'd love to hear your thoughts. There is a group chat over on Twitter, of all places, and it would be great if you could come and join us. So again, leave your Twitter details down below, or you can leave them over on the announcement videos, and we will make sure that you are joined into that chat so you can join in the discussions. And don't worry, just let us know what you haven't read or what you're currently reading or planning on reading, you know, whatever, so we can make sure that there aren't any spoilers there for you. Another thing that I wanted to talk about are my reading goals for 2019. I did think about doing a separate video addressing these, but I actually don't think I have that many, not enough to do a whole video about it. So I thought I'd just mention them here, and if I think of any more then I can always do a separate video about it. But anyway, I set my reading goal on Goodreads for the year 2018 at reading 52 books, and that was realistic for me, and I really enjoyed having a reading goal because I'm a very competitive person, and that really motivated me to keep going with my reading and not to allow that to drop off. And I've exceeded my goal. I've currently, as I'm filming this, I have read 69 books, and I still have quite a few books planned for the rest of the year, and I have the Christmas holidays coming up. So I should surpass that goal pretty significantly, but I don't want to set my goal for 2019 too high, because while I am a competitive person, I don't do well with failure. And if I'm unlikely to hit my reading goal, then that's likely to really demotivate me. So I'm thinking of setting my goal this year, or for 2019, at 60 books, which if I read at the same rate as I'm currently reading, will absolutely be doable, but it still presents more of a challenge than I set myself this year, because it's an additional 8 books throughout the year, which I would have already achieved by this point next year if I read the same amount, because I'm on 69 now. But I think that that's sensible, because I don't want to set myself up to fail. So I'm going to set it at 60, and I can always amend it later in the year if I think that I need to do that. So that's one goal. Another goal that I would like to achieve is I would like to try and expand my reading horizons a little bit. Like I said before, fantasy, and especially epic fantasy and big fantasy books, are really my bag, and it's pretty much all I read. But that makes me a very narrow reader, and I do want to expand on that a little bit. But again, I want to be realistic, because I don't want to send myself into reading slumps trying to read things that I'm really not going to enjoy. For example, I know that I really don't like non-fiction. It has to be something that really grabs my attention. I did read one non-fiction this year, which was This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, and I really enjoyed that. So I don't rule out reading any non-fiction, but it's definitely not something that I'm going to prioritise, because reading is for enjoying, and non-fiction is something that I just really don't enjoy. Other than that though, I really don't read a lot of contemporary. I don't read a lot of horror, mostly because I'm a complete wimp, but I do know that there is a section of the horror genre that isn't too scary. For example, I've read zombie books before and I didn't find those too scary, so I would like to try and read a bit more contemporary, a bit more horror, and I want to continue with reading manga, which I've been enjoying in this sort of last quarter of the year, so I definitely want to continue with that. So I'm going to try, if I can, to read at least one book from either one of those genres, or basically any genre that takes my fantasy outside fantasy? Did I say fantasy or fancy? Any book outside of the fantasy genre that takes my fancy. I would like to read one of those books a month, if I can. So again, it's a realistic goal, but something that I'm definitely interested in trying to do. And finally, my last goal for 2019 is more of a booktube goal than a reading goal, but I would really, really love to make some more friends here, really. I think what I need to do is I need to push myself a little bit more out of my comfort zone to make more friends here, because it's daunting sometimes to talk to people, especially on Twitter, where there are already so many established relationships, and I tend to be more of an observer rather than somebody who goes and starts conversations with people. And it's something that I really need to work on, both in my real life and in my digital life. It's something I find really, really daunting on a personal level. I suffer with anxiety, and it gives me anxiety to think about talking to people. I wonder all these things like, well, you know, I'm just bothering them, they don't want to talk to me, why would they want to talk to me when they've got so many more interesting people to talk to? You know, it's scary, but I want to try and in the year 2019 push myself just a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I think it's something, I did some cognitive behavioural therapy recently for my anxiety, and one of the things is that if you are avoiding certain situations, then you're just feeding your anxiety about those situations. So you need to push yourself into that anxiety on a consistent basis to try and recover from it. So it's really hard for me, and I feel quite safe sat here behind my camera where, you know, I'm talking to people, but really I'm just sat in a room on my own just talking to myself, and I upload it on the internet and I don't really think too much about it, but there's something about Twitter particularly that I find a lot more intimidating, so I want to try and push myself there. So those are my goals for 2019 to do with reading and booktube and book Twitter and all that jazz. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to discuss here today. If you have any thoughts about any of the things that I've talked about, please do let me know down below. I want to engage with people. It's one of my goals, so help me to achieve it, please. Bit of a weird video, I realise, but it's nice to just have a bit of a ramble every once in a while. That's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button. I'd be so grateful, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks. Bye.